Hello YouTube. Baikonur Cosmodrome is a spaceport in an area of southern Kazakhstan. It's leased to Russia. The Cosmodrome, or the spaceport, is the world's first spaceport for orbital and human launches and the largest in an area operational space launch facility. All manned Russian space flights are launched from Baikonur. From here, human being embarked into space for the first time to explore and conquer it. This place still keeps its secrets and legends. For example, the Dark Shepherd Baikonur, translated from Kazakh, means rich valley. This is the name of the area in which the Cosmodrome itself is located. The ancient nomads who lived in those desert places had an interesting legend about a dark shepherd who built a huge sling out of skins, filled it with red-hot stones and camel fat, and threw these stones at enemies who were approaching his camp. Falling hot stones and fat hit the enemies. Those who survived fled in terror. Nothing grew in these places where the stones fell. For a long time nothing grew, and scorch marks remained on the ground. So nomads consider this valley to be the navel of the earth. According to experts, this legend is more than 10 centuries old. Now, completely different burning stones, satellites and rockets nowadays are flying out of the giant sling of the Cosmodrome. So the ancient legend found its reflection in the mirror of modernity. Only the difference is that modern stones are full of radiation. The Soviets concealed the sites through purpose. Baikonur is a stadium. This is what they called it. This is what the cover story said. The construction was carried out in the strictest secrecy. No one was supposed to know what was being built and for what purpose. The goods arrived in ordinary train loads, which were unloaded under the cover of night. The builders were convinced that they were building a stadium, and many, after the construction was completed, were perplexed. They said, "We were just building a stadium, so why do we need medals and special orders for that as awards? There's no need to talk about difficult conditions, climate, sandstorms, dry winds, and frosts." So at first, the builders lived in dugouts, and then the barracks were gradually created. Also, next to the future Cosmodrome, another fake Cosmodrome was built, as well as a whole town. A replica, with schools, residential buildings, and other objects. Sergei Korolev, father of the Soviet space exploration, considered Baikonur to be a lucky place. During the excavation of the pit for the future Gagarin launch into space, an ancient bonfire was discovered at a depth of 35 meters. Archaeologists have established the age of the find from 10 to 35,000 years before Common Era. Korolev was very pleased with this news. He considered it a lucky sign. We're building on the border of life. If there was life here before us, then this place will be lucky for us too. The chief designer took a piece of coal from that ancient fire for himself as a souvenir and carried it around in a matchbox. De Gaulle, by the way, we need to mention about De Gaulle. He was on Baikonur on June 25, 1966, actually in the town of Leninsk, 45 kilometers from Baikonur. And for one day, it became a star city, again, for reasons of strictest secrecy. That's what they were doing to hide the real purpose of the Cosmodrome. The loans were hastily put in order. The payments were covered with new asphalt. It was clear that something important was planned in the city. Thus began Operation Palm 1, a tremendous performance demonstration of the missile power of the USSR. The spectator was the president of France himself, General de Gaulle. The operation involved the commander of the strategic missile forces and all the missile units of the Baikonur division, as well as Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Kosygin, and others. The demonstration went flawlessly. De Gaulle was impressed. The successful launch of a man into space gave rise to a serious interest of Western countries in Soviet rockets. So it was decided to conduct a series of trips to the cosmodrome for Western leaders in order to protect themselves and everybody else from unauthorized leaks of information. The exact number of these operations, codenamed Palm, is still unknown, but it is known for sure that there were several of them. There was also a tragedy that was, of course, unknown at the time at Baikonur on October 24. This is the memory of a long hidden and therefore little known tragedy. So what happened in October of 1960? A disaster occurred during the testing of a new intercontinental ballistic missile. During electrical tests on a refueled rocket, a sudden start of the second stage engines occurred. A fire started as a result of which, as well as poisoning with fuel vapors, 76 servicemen and civilian specialists died. Among the dead was the commander-in-chief, Marshal of Artillery Nedelin. According to eyewitnesses from the marshal, who was sitting not far from the rocket on a wooden stool, there was only a shadow on the ground and a melted button of his uniform by which he was identified. That's all that was left of him. The death of the commander-in-chief of the rocket forces and the catastrophe were hidden. Relatives were informed about the death of their loved ones only a week later. For the most meticulous, an account was invented about the ignition of barrels of gasoline. But also, you need to know that there have been a number of legendary launches from the cosmodrome: the intercontinental ballistic missile, the first artificial satellite of the Earth, the legendary Sputnik 1, the first spacecraft to fly to the moon, Luna 1, the first manned orbiter with Yuri Gagarin on board, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. All of them launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. About 300 former employees of the Cosmodrome they lived in the so-called Staraya Skol town around the year 2005. Most of the Baikonur residents moved to Belgorod region on military certificates for housing back in 1994. They almost completely occupied the multi-entrance building number 1 on Zelený Log Street. Veterans of Baikonur do not like to talk about the flying saucers, but some of them, on the condition of confidentiality, agreed to tell the Russian media correspondent about what they saw and heard during their service at the Cosmodrome. Ex-cosmonauts showed the reporters a secret letter describing UFO visits to Baikonur. This paper was compiled by Leningrad ufologists in the late 1970s. Here are some excerpts from it. 1. On August 30, 1977, about 24 hours, a mother and her 11-year-old daughter observed a small green sphere flying over the city of Leninsk from east to west. The object radiated concentric rings. The phenomenon lasted about 4 minutes. At the same time, the observers experienced an unaccountable feeling of horror. 2. At the beginning of January 1978, at about 20 hours, 8 soldiers and a lieutenant observed an oblong object hanging over the test site at an altitude of 200 meters. According to eyewitnesses, the object was made of light metal and did not glow. On June 3rd, 1978, at 22 hours, about 20 employees of the Design Bureau saw an orange spot over the cosmodrome. 4 bright dots separated from it. About 15 minutes later, the spot moved away or flew away, and the 3 dots flew into it. One of the bright dots disappeared in the other direction. And this is how the radiologist, Lieutenant Colonel of the Medical Service, Valery Bogdanov, who had served in the military hospital of Baikonur from 1979 to 1996, described the flying saucer. In the summer of 1991, hundreds of people observed UFOs over the cosmodrome, including my daughter Marina, said Bogdanov. In broad daylight, a large pink pillar of perfect cylindrical shape appeared over our hospital. At first, it stood upright and then slowly turned 90 degrees. So it hung or hovered in the sky for a couple of hours and then disappeared. It's been at the talk of the town for a week. And now I will give you information from the books of Russia's foremost UFO researcher and author, Mikhail Gerstein, whom I have a pleasure to know for, probably 24 years now. On April 3rd, 1990, an object of an oblong ellipsoid shape with a brown rim appeared in the area of Site Number 6, the territory of the Meteorological Service. It moved from northeast to southwest silently. After a while, 2 more of the same objects quickly passed the same course at the same altitude. It was at 16 hours 30 minutes local time, said the head of the Meteorological Service of the Cosmodrome, Major Polyakov. I approached the station. The soldiers say they saw something strange, and immediately an ellipsoid object of gray color with a narrow brown stripe across appeared in the sky. By order of Polyakov, the MRL-5 radar was switched on. The observation was conducted by the operator Dolbilin in the presence of senior researcher Shipilov. Sasha runs in and shouts, "Turn on the locator," the operator called later. I turn it on. The all-round radar detects targets at a distance of 40 kilometers in the southeast. The speed movement is up to 300 kilometers an hour. We request the flight director report that there is only one helicopter in the atmosphere and there are 4 targets. Gradually, the objects merged into one target and left the detection zone. On the all-around view indicator, the radio echoed targets were larger in size than conventional aircraft. After 2 minutes of observation, the 3 distant objects merged into one object. The illumination was not local, as happens when an airplane is detected in the sky, but was a solid column 1.5 kilometer high from the Earth's surface at the altitude. It was as if a giant iron pillar was being rolled on the ground. Maybe it was this case in 1993 that Colonel General Ivanov, commander of the military space forces, recalled. Listen to this. There was a case about 5 years ago when 3 objects passed a little away from Baikonur at a high altitude, which were clearly visible on the locator screen. We still don't know what it was, but we know for sure that it wasn't airplanes. Like everyone else, I'm not indifferent to this problem. I cannot simply reject the possibility of the existence of UFOs, as many do. Fireballs have repeatedly landed in the steppes It's like savanna near the cosmodrome, depriving the launch pads of electricity. Officially, everyone who tried to find out something about UFO visits to Leninsk and Baikonur received very laconic military response. As a result of long-term observations of the air situation in the area of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, reliable data on the appearance of unidentified flying objects have not been registered. Signed, First Deputy Commander of the Military Unit 57275, Lysenkov. This is what I wanted to let you know today, and I will bring you more stories, of course, about UFOs over Central Asia, and you can see my videos on this subject of, generally Soviet and Russian UFOs, and then Central Asian countries as well, like Uzbekistan, like Kazakhstan, and of course, further areas in Eurasia as well. Thank you for your attention to my work. If you can support my research, please do so. You'll find the links in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel, and please like my videos.